Welcome, my friends. Let's get right to it. What is the most important rule to follow when starting a business? I have followed this rule when I started my business, and I barely got by and was successful. If you don't follow it, which I have done on several occasions, I can almost guarantee you will not be successful. It's called the 10,000 hour rule, and this was created by, or the idea was created by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers, and I'll put the name down below. Before we jump into that, everybody has a circle of competence. Your business needs to be within that circle of competence. You have a set of skills that you've gathered through education, experience, and these form that circle. Your business needs to be in that circle of competence. Before you go into business, I would recommend that you have at least 10,000 hours of experience or education within that circle. Within this book, Malcolm Gladwell talks about that they basically, he gives example after example of how it's taken most people, in order to become a master in their field, it takes them at least 10,000 hours to do so. Athletes, writers, chess players, master criminals, it just seems like the same number keeps popping up. He gave the example of the Beatles. The Beatles, before they became, burst on the scene of success, they were performing quite often 8 hours a day at these various, I guess what they'd call them were like strip clubs. And they figured out that prior to, again, becoming successful, they had performed live over 1,200 times. Think about that for a minute. Think about how many times that is live in front of an audience. Most bands might play once a week or twice a week in front of a live audience, and so in the course of a year they go 100 times. So they were 1,200 times the 8 times, they're just their practice time, and they're all well into that 10,000 hours, and that's why they became one of the best bands of all time. So let me give the example. Let's say you're going to start a restaurant. In order to have a lot of people have that romantic idea of starting a restaurant. The other one is, I'm going to start a bed and breakfast. Before you do so, I would recommend that you've worked in a restaurant. Let's talk about the restaurant. You've worked in a restaurant, you've managed a restaurant, you've taken classes on business and on how to run a restaurant. These hours should add up to 10,000. And even then, I think you're on the low end. 10,000 hours, what is that? Just to give you a kind of a frame of reference. If you work full time in a year, 40 hours a week, generally that is a little over 2,000 hours. 2,050, I believe. So I'm talking about 5 years of experience. In my example, my first business that I started, I had 6 years of education as a physical therapist. It was a physical therapy company. I had 2 years in a master's degree, which was in administration of a healthcare business. I had worked, during that time, some of this coincided together, I had worked in the field for at least 3 years. And even then, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I still had to learn my way through, but I was able to make it, and just get by. The only exception to this 10,000 hour rule would be, is if money's not going to be an issue. Let's say, for example, you're starting part-time in your business, or let's say your spouse is trying to, is helping you fund the business, and you can slowly learn your way through the business and get that experience that way without the money pressures. Now that's going to take a lot longer time, and that's exactly how I'm starting a business now that we've been working on for several years. This is the business I'm starting is a product business, where I normally was more into a service industry. So, but we're learning our way. It's being funded by my other business, so that's one way you can do it without having that 10,000 hours right away. Understand this, you are going to be up against people that do have the 10,000 hours and much more. So for you to compete, you really need to be ready to do so. I would say the really cool thing about the 10,000 hour rule, not only will it help you give you the possibility of success, it also stops you from going willy-nilly into businesses that you have no business belonging. This was one of my great faults. My first business was really pretty successful, and throwing off some cash. And because I thought I was successful in one business, I thought I could go into other businesses and be just as successful. And that just was not true, because I didn't have the knowledge in those areas. And once I decided that I am going to have that 10,000 hour rule in place, that stopped me from looking at other areas where I had no business belonging. So it served that purpose. All right, let's roll the quotes.